Hello, everyone. Welcome to Elevating Your Life. I am so thrilled to share our guest with you today. We have the amazing Dr. Anthony Silard. He is a professor of leadership and organizational psychology and director of the Center for Sustainable Leadership at Lewis Business School in Rome, who has lectured at Harvard, Stanford, Berkeley, and Georgetown. He has coached leaders from G20 governments, Fortune 500 companies, including Apple, Disney, Google, Toyota, and Boeing, and global nonprofits such as Save the Children, the American Red Cross, and CARE, a recipient of Harvard's Robert F. Kennedy Public Service Award, and named PBS Visionary of the Year. Anthony is one of the world's most published researchers on leadership and loneliness. He writes a widely read Psychology Today column and has been featured in Fortune USA Today and Forbes. His latest book, Love and Suffering, Break the Emotional Chains That Prevent You from Experiencing Love, distills 3 decades of research on loneliness, emotional trauma, and human connection into the love progression model, a practical research grounded framework guiding readers from suffering and resentment towards acceptance, forgiveness, and gratitude and authentic love. Oh my gosh, I'm just so happy to have you here, Anthony.
Well, Paula, it's really an honor. I love your show. I love your book, and you are just a real joy in the universe and a gem. So I'm just really grateful you invited me to be on your show.
Oh, thank you so much. Wow. Well, first off, would you like to share any more of your past history and maybe what prompted you to write this book?
Okay, so many people don't know this, but the word passion comes from the Latin patire, which means to suffer. So actually, often our own trauma, our own challenges in life, we transform them into our passion for what we want to change in the world, the contribution we want to make. And love and suffering is really about how to create what I call a CMSR. A CMSR is a compassionate, meaningful, sustainable relationship. And all of the research I do, all the books I write, they're all about how do we create CMSRs? How do we create relationships that will last and that will be meaningful and enjoyable? And love and suffering is really about that. There's these 4 plateaus in the love progression model, each based in psychological research, also with a lot of stories of people struggling in these areas and transcending often really formidable odds to be able to reach these states of these plateaus, which are these 4 plateaus are acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude, and love, as you mentioned. Each one has an obstacle that has to be overcome. So we overcome suffering to reach acceptance, resentment to reach a state of forgiveness, judgment to reach a state of gratitude, and then what I call incarceration to reach a state of love. So that's what drives me is trying to help people to reach a more exalted state where they kind of the way I see it is that most of us, we go through life with our hands covering our eyes. And I want to help people remove their hands and see the light and the love that's in front of them if they're just willing to take a look at it. Because I think sometimes we get so caught up in the challenges we're facing that we lose sight of love. Lose sight of what's possible for us.
Oh, and and you've mentioned that, with suffering being the opposite of love, but it's actually the pathway to it. So with that, we can move on to that love, can't we?
Yeah, because suffering is like a guide. It guides us toward who and what we love. Because when we suffer, there's a gap in our lives. And And there's something that we find like particularly difficult that we dealt with. And let's put this in practical terms. Let me give you an example. So I coached a woman who was a marketing director for a Fortune 100 pharmaceutical company. So she came to me and she said, Anthony, I hate my job. I am I'm actually worried I'm going to become sick going back into that office. I don't enjoy what I'm doing. I need to make a change to stay alive. And I mean, and she was just making tons of money, and major status in society. But for her, it wasn't, it wasn't her. It wasn't an authentic expression of who she was. And so I asked her, well, I said, well, tell me a little bit about how you grew up. Like what have you experienced in your life? And so she shared, she said, well, my childhood was not easy at all. Actually, my father died from cancer, and most of my childhood was my mother and I taking care of him and nurturing him until he passed away when I was 12. So I often, when I'm doing my conferences, I ask people, like, well, what do you think she's doing now? And many people will say, well, is she a nurse? And no, she's not a nurse. She's a director of a major hospital leading a team of researchers and doctors to find cures to cancer and other diseases so fewer families will suffer the way hers did. So for her, she's taken that suffering and transformed it into passion. You see, what happens with most of us is we take our pain or our suffering and we let it naturally convert into anger. And we become angry uh, at ourselves for not having figured a better way around it, even when we often didn't have a choice or we were very young. We become angry at others for the perpetrators. And then that expands into being angry at everyone in society. It's not a good place to be in. That's where the resentment, the obstacle to forgiveness, that's where resentment is born. Because resentment stands for, again, and sentire, which is to feel. Resentment is to feel anger again and again and again until you become paralyzed. And this is not good for anyone. So, myself, growing up, I had a physically abusive stepfather, right? So a man comes into your home, beats you up, and sleeps with your mother. You don't feel like much of a person. That's how I grew up. Very low self-esteem. Other kids would make fun of me because they saw that I didn't feel good about myself. And that, so for up until my 30s, I'm 58 now. Up until my early 30s, I really wasn't going anywhere in my career. It was just like I was so angry at the world and I felt like a victim. And there's a certain point where I went to Argentina to Patagonia and I went hiking for a couple weeks by myself. So I'm there in these forests, beautiful, a beautiful place to be. It gave me a lot of chance to think, and I realized like I need to forgive my now ex-stepfather because I'm stuck. And I do this exercise, and this is one of the exercises in love and suffering, where you you think about who is the person that you most have trouble forgiving in your life. Now, I don't use these words lightly because I've been a coach, as you mentioned, I've been a coach to many Fortune 500 CEOs, senior leaders, nonprofits, mayors, G20 cabinet ministers. I coach a lot of leaders from all sectors. And every single leader that I've coached, there's been some area of their life where they're blocked, they're stuck. And with no variance whatsoever, Paula, every single time, the reason they're stuck is because there's someone in their life they've never been able to forgive. So that's where being able to forgive is really important, but it's not the final plateau. There's still gratitude and love. But forgiveness, one way to help us to forgive is, and now this is what I do with my clients, is I ask them, okay, so who's the person you're having trouble forgiving? Well, write down all the behaviors, all the actions that they took that you are unable to forgive. So, like in my case, for example, well, my ex-stepfather beat me up, right? I mean, he threw me down against a radiator and almost broke my back. I couldn't walk right for a week. I mean, I think about what are the different actions, right? So that's the first column. So for your listeners out there, write or think about what are the behaviors this person has committed that you are really having difficulty forgiving? Then in the second column, write down what character quality is associated with each of those behaviors. In my case, okay, my ex-stepfather beat me up. That was insensitivity, being callous, being insecure. And so do the same for all the behaviors of the person you're having trouble forgiving. So now we go to the third column. Now, the third column is the showstopper. This is the one that stops people in their tracks and they first have difficulty with, but then realize it's the key to forgiveness. In the third column, write down for each character quality, for example, insensitivity or whatever it is, for each character quality, write down who in your life, at any point in your life, would attribute that same character quality to you.
Oh,
So So when I did this, it was just jaw-dropping because I was like, well, wait a second. I've been insensitive. When I after my parents divorced when I was 5, a few years later, I'm at summer camp and I had this good friend, David, and he just said something I didn't like, and he didn't even mean it to be mean or aggressive in any way. And I just hauled off and gave him a bloody nose, like for no reason. I think about the relationships where I was insensitive or callous. I could have showed up in a much better way. And it helps us to realize that the first person we need to forgive is ourselves. And once, if we're able to forgive ourselves, it opens us up to be like, well, how can I blame and feel this resentment over and over again toward this other person because they have not been perfect when I haven't been perfect either?
oh, that's a powerful statement. Yeah. And to realize that, oh my gosh. And with forgiveness, something you mentioned, but it's not just excusing someone's behavior, it's a way of freeing ourselves.
Absolutely, Paula. So the way I say this in or write this in Love and Suffering is that forgiveness is necessary for personal development. Trust is necessary for relationship development. The two are different, forgiveness and trust. Forgiving someone doesn't mean you're necessarily going to trust them again. Like I've never sought out my ex-stepfather, like, oh, you know what, I really want to have a continued relationship. He actually passed away, so it wouldn't be possible now. But I wouldn't anyway. It's like I by forgiving him, it's like I let go of the any kind of negative emotions associated with him and then I become disentangled. That knot becomes undone, which really is a knot in my heart that was produced by this relationship that did not function well. And that's what we need to do sometimes. Now, trust is different. So trust is is saying, okay, I predict that this person is not going to engage in these types of behaviors in the future. By the way that they're acting, I think that they understood that that was not a good thing to do, whatever they did, and that I can trust them not to do that again, or to act toward me in a more loving and compassionate way. But forgiveness, again, the opposite is resentment. It's becoming stuck. So if we want to become unstuck, we have to forgive. Now, we get a lot of messaging in our society about forgiveness that I think is all wrong, right? So, for example, forgiveness is the highest form of love. This is said in a lot of theologians, a lot of psychologists. Forgiveness is you really don't get higher than forgiveness when it comes to love. I completely disagree because forgiveness actually can be paternalistic and patronizing. Let me ask you, Paula, how would you like someone to say this to you? You really hurt me. You really wronged me. I was so hurt by what happened in our relationship and the way you treated me, and I want you to know that I forgive you. Like, I don't know about you, but that message is so laced with negative energy and kind of a competitive, like power claiming
Yeah,
that
that's
I certainly wouldn't want to hear that from someone. And and this is the thing is that forgiveness is saying first of all, I hold propriety over what's right and wrong. I possess this moral rectitude, and I possess it and you do not, but I forgive you for being who you are and not possessing it. So what I write about in Love and Suffering is that forgiveness is impossible without judgment. You can't forgive someone unless you first judge them. What if you didn't judge them in the first place? It's like Rumi, the Afghan poet, says that, there's a field beyond judgment. I'll meet you there, right? What if we could meet each other there? Instead of judging, we could say, oh, just instead try to use empathy, understanding, compassion, and understand that, for example, in the case of my ex-stepfather, right? This is a man who was a journalist in Washington, D.C., originally from Minnesota, came to Washington, lost his job, couldn't find another one, felt that society had chewed him up and spit him out, did not feel much sense of self-confidence. So then here comes along this very opinionated 11-year-old boy, and he claimed this false sense of power and superiority by physically assaulting this kid. And of course, that wasn't a good thing to do. However, that's what he was able to do at the time with the social, psychological, emotional resources he possessed. So if I judge him for that, I'm judging him based on the social, psychological, emotional resources I possess right now. So first of all, it's a temporal misalignment. Like this is me judging him now based on what he did years ago. Whereas maybe today he wouldn't do that. Maybe he's grown. Some people go through life and a few people grow through life. Maybe he's grown and in a way that he now has the emotional, social, psychological resources not to engage in that kind of a negative behavior. So it's judging him based on a temporal misalignment around time, also on a values misalignment because I'm judging him with my values based on his actions. Question is, what are his values? Maybe he was so distanced from his own values, from all the pain and what he was experiencing, that
Mhm.
he wasn't able to make decisions that were aligned with the person he really wanted to be. Now, I don't know about you, but I know that I myself many times I go, I really don't like the way I acted today. And I know I can do better. I give myself the latitude to grow and to say, well, I know that my actions today weren't so aligned with my values. I'm going to do better tomorrow. If tomorrow is always a new day for ourselves, why can't it also always be a new day for others?
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. And something I've always been very passionate about is focusing on gratitude. You've mentioned that gratitude can be a powerful, a psychological shift. And it's like in my life, there's been times when I'm very stressed or upset about something, and I say, I'm going to think about one thing in my life that I'm grateful for. And even if it's food in the refrigerator, I mean, and that can just totally change the tone of where my mindset is. What's your thoughts on gratitude?
Well, it's interesting, Paula. I have to confess something to you. After reading Why Am I So Happy, your wonderful book, I thought, I need to go and during our conversation with Paula, I need to ask her, Paula, why are you so happy? Because what I'm seeing and when I write about gratitude and love and suffering, the major, one of the major themes there is that gratitude is what I call an interpersonal panacea. It's the closest we have to something we can just do at any time, like write down a gratitude list or just think, what am I grateful for today? And it really does lead to more happiness and well-being. And I know and imagine that's very important for you, but I want to ask you, why are you so happy? And what does that have to do with gratitude?
I would say because I do think about something I'm grateful for, and I feel it's very important, to be have I have we all have something called happiness triggers. And it's like I make a point to give myself my happiness triggers. It can be standing outside, listening to the birds, watching a beautiful sunset, but little things, music, wherever I am, if I hear a good song, I'm dancing. I don't care where I'm at the
Mhm.
store, but happiness triggers. That's something that would help me shift when I'm carrying challenges. So I would say that's.
That is beautiful, Paula. I have to tell you that when I was a kid, I saw The Color Purple by Alice Walker's book. It was made into a movie with a very early Oprah Winfrey in it also. And I remember watching The Color Purple and that message, which actually I got more when I read the book, when I read the book about a year later, that there's this whole theme in there that God would be angry if if we walk by a patch of purple flowers and we don't feel gratitude to see those flowers, to see the beauty of them. And I think that's the thing is that most of us are going so fast that we don't really slow down enough to see the beauty all around us, a smile on a child's face, beautiful music, dancing, as you said, laughing. In fact, all of these are really what connects us as human beings to with each other is this appreciation for this natural beauty around us and within us. And I agree. I often just stop and think I'm so grateful for my family. I'm grateful just to be alive. I'm grateful for my health, and I'm grateful to be doing something where, there's a saying like the day you find the job you love is the last day you have to work. I don't feel like I'm working most of the time. I feel like this is just what I enjoy doing. It's my passion. It's a way to contribute to others and to the world, and I feel blessed to be able to do this and just feel that sense of flow of being able to really believe in something and in a very small way try to transform it into action.
I love that. I love that. So, what would you say to our audience, to someone that may be, feeling stuck? And it's like, how do I get out of that negativity? What could be a first step I could make right now?
Well, I think a first step could be to go beyond forgiveness and into gratitude and even think about that resentment you feel towards person or people in your life that didn't treat you the way you wanted. Maybe, as a child, you knew you couldn't survive subconsciously. You knew it without your parents, without other adults to help you, take care of you. And maybe they didn't do a very good job, or maybe others you really needed a friend and someone was like betrayed you or was abusive. Whatever it was, is is thinking like, well, it's one thing to forgive them. It's another thing to be grateful that instead of staying at home, I could go out and have this interaction partner, or even at home, I had this interaction partner that taught me about us, like a part of myself that was underdeveloped and helped me develop it. And if you think about the person you are today, I'm willing to bet you that the values you hold dear today have been shaped by these formative moments in your life and made you the person you are. I'm actually leading one of the largest studies on actually it is the largest study on secondary trauma in police forces in the US. We had interviews in 3 states, about 10 police departments, officers as well as their civilian staff. And so I asked them, like, well, what have you experienced that's really has traumatized you? And for 40 minutes, the interview is all about gloom and doom and stress and all of the negative things associated with the trauma they've experienced. And it's been a lot, trust me. And then I ask a question that kind of silences them, stops them in their tracks. And I ask them, so how has the trauma you've experienced benefited you? And it's just silence. Excuse me? Well, think about the person you are today. Think about the person you were before you started doing this police work, before you started experiencing this trauma. And how have you changed, if at all? How have your values developed or shifted or become refined? And now the rest of the interview, it's like positive tone. It's completely different. And they start saying, well, because of what I've been through, it's changed my relationship with God, it's changed my relationship with my family. I really take time for my children now. And I value my friends. And so this is what's called post-traumatic growth. It's that some people take their trauma and they really grow from it. It's like, again, most people go through life and most people go through life, a few people grow through life. They take that trauma and instead of letting it naturally convert into anger, as we talked about earlier, that they transform it into passion to do something beautiful for the world. And
Yeah.
so I would say if you're feeling stuck, I'm speaking to each of your listeners here, if you're feeling stuck, then instead of running from those negative experiences you've had, look them straight in the eye and accept them. Accept, okay, this is what I've experienced. I can't change that. Let me really let me let me call it what it is. Read the writing on the wall. This is what I've experienced. And then now you have a basis where you can start to dream. You can start to visualize how you want your life to be different. And then you can put that into action. But only when you first like unremittingly accept
Oh,
this is what you've experienced. All addictions are attempts to escape the emotions associated with the negative experiences we've had in the past. And the way we can transcend addiction is the same way. It's just accept your emotions, accept how you feel. Susan Piver wrote a book where she writes about inviting your negative emotions over for dinner. Literally invite them over, and there they are, and ask each negative emotion, like, why are you here? Okay, loneliness, I see you're here today. Thanks for coming over. Tell me why you're here. What can I learn from you?
and
Really have like a no
you are
holds barred
so
conversation with us.
that
Mhm.
is powerful. That is powerful. I'm afraid our time is run down. We have about 20 seconds. Thank you so much, Anthony, for being on the show. I'm so grateful. And thank you for all you do for others with your great messages.
Oh, thank you, Paula. And just to tell your listeners, I've got two free books for them, The Myth of Happiness and The Myth of Friendship. And they can access those books at theartoflivingfree.org/free happiness and friendship books. Again, theartoflivingfree.org/free happiness and friendship books. Thank you so much, Paula. I really enjoyed our
Thank
conversation.
you. Big hugs.